Why is Greta Thunberg hated? Depends on who you're asking. Obviously, the generalized way of explaining it is that Greta Thunberg is a young woman without any specific qualifications or experience that explain why she is as significant as she is in this sphere. One way to interpret that would be to say that her detractors feel insecure or insulted by being lectured by someone they don't feel has earned their respect. Those people will probably say things like, "Why are we listening to a child instead of experts?" or something like that. Another way to interpret it would be to say that people are skeptical or conspiratorial about why she has risen to prominence. They might be of the opinion that the fact that Greta is pretty much just a normal young woman makes it difficult to argue with her without looking like a dick. Even if the argument itself is in good faith, that makes them upset because they feel they can't engage in the discussion they want to have when Greta is involved. These people will probably say things about her being a mouthpiece or a puppet for someone else. Yet another way of interpreting it is that her detractors are disillusioned with the state of debate as a whole. They think that public discourse is rooted in populism or influencer culture. Greta's activism involves a lot of impassioned speeches and dramatic stories. And these people want the discussion to be dispassionate. They see her as emblematic of a broader problem in society that reinforces conflict and doesn't result in resolution. These people will probably talk about polarization a lot, and depending on their political stance, might link it to the elites manipulating the common people to keep them divided. A fourth way to interpret it would be that her detractors are simply engaging in political strategy of their own. They don't agree with her stance, and are just attacking her because they'd attack anyone saying the same things. But it's easier to attack an average young woman than it would be to question a Nobel Prize-winning scientist. These people can say pretty much anything, because they're not really basing their opposition on a particular principle. That also means this group can blend with any other group. In my friend group, we're all very pro-green energy and about trying to fix climate change. Our problem with her is we hear her speeches, but she doesn't offer any real solutions. I've heard 1,001 politicians and actors and big business people make speeches about the need to address the climate crisis, but so far none of them have actually done anything. She speaks the same way as they do, albeit just younger and not rich. As far as we can tell, she's just a teenager who's passionate about something, which is really no different than any other teenager. I want solutions and actions, not fancy speeches to raise awareness, cause we've already got that. From what I've seen, she often shames people for problems, but offers no solutions to actually fix those problems. So even if she is shaming people for problems that they caused, she isn't accomplishing much since she isn't offering solutions. Essentially just seen as someone who whines a lot when others are actually doing things. Because she's a child with no experience or in-depth knowledge being used as an emotional tool to push a narrative. She's also been seen numerous times lying about taking inexpensive forms of transportation when she was in fact in first class. There was one instance where she claimed she was on a train so packed there were no seats left for her, but the company that owns the train revealed she had a first-class seat. I don't hate Greta. She's just a kid. I hate the people using her disingenuously to push a political narrative. A narrative I don't even fully disagree with. By the way, I agree climate change is an issue. She's the Jaden Smith of climate change. She's fighting for a really good cause in a really old, trite, useless way, and her whole parental situation has a mild whiff of child, neurodivergent abuse to it. I don't hate her. I'm sort of concerned for her. As much as a third-world parent can be concerned for a first-world youngster with a cushy life and an Oversized platform. I believe it's BC people are skeptical due to the idea that a child is being used vicariously through adults and put in the spotlight to work towards a political cause. I'm not sure if that has any merit or not, but that's what may be behind some of the dislike of a child as a spokesperson. Children who become so high profile always have adults with an agenda behind them. So it may seem not as genuine to people. From what little I know of her, she seems quite remarkable, and I hope the fame has been a blessing to her and not a negative thing looking back. I don't hate her, but can someone tell me if anything changed at all after her protests? She is a kid who started getting attention ever since the PR expert Ingmar Rentzhog created her. Her parents are also famous, so it was always easy for her to get attention. I am absolutely convinced that if Greta was black and grew up in a poor country, she would never be able to reach this point. She is an upper middle class kid who probably has her heart in the right place, but she actually don't provide any realistic solutions. I think worshipping a child is harmful. It absolutely dumbs everything down. The media tend to be really dishonest and biased about her. During her boat campaign, for instance, several crew members flew home after they reached their destination. I think the attention she gains is not deserved and absolutely not relevant in any way. I have nothing against Jesus, it's his fan club I cannot stand. I really don't pay much attention to her, but am familiar. That being said, I think it is largely political. Media is immensely powerful in getting people to believe things, whether it is untrue things or that some person is bad, etc. For example, I was listening to a podcast about how media has created the political climate we're in, and they used an example of the statement, "Defund the police." You might think this is a super well-supported liberal idea and that lots of people support it. In reality, it was a random tweet by someone who got picked up by both right and left-wing media and spun into a slogan. On the right, it was used to demonize the left and BLM, etc. The narrative was that leftists want less police and to let criminals run free. The left-wing media adopted it in much the same vein, only that it was a good idea, etc. In reality, 80% of left and right did not want less policing. So it was never real. It was just something that was drummed up as being real, until people on both sides picked up the banner out of sheer tribalism and ran with it. This is Greta. Right-wing media whipped her up as some sort of abused, mentally ill, extremist villain who is also just out to make a buck. The left put her on some pillar as some sort of hero. The reality is, Greta is a young person who is autistic. It is normal for autistic people to get very focused on one thing, and it's normal for them to share very strong opinions about it. Her brief moment in the spotlight would have been as brief and random as a lot of accidental internet fame, but the two sides of the media turned her into a villain and a hero respectively. TLDR. The moral of the story here is think critically for yourself. Don't be like the tribalists who just vomit up what they've been spoon-fed. Left or right, be smart. Here in Sweden, it's mostly because of her mother. More miserable woman there are only a few of. The problem with her is that she presents a problem but offers no solution. She literally dropped out of school to protest climate change. If you want the climate change problem to be solved, graduate from high school, go to college, get an engineering degree like myself, and work on a solution. It's reasonable to expect anyone to recognize their place in the world. Recognize that Greta and I combined have less than 1% of the world's knowledge in our heads. And especially when this thing began. She was 15. But even now at 19 and me 32, we know nothing compared to the combined knowledge of humanity. As is said, we stand on the shoulders of giants. Meaning Greta and I are both where we are because of tens of thousands of years of, not our relatives, but our ancestors' efforts. There are millions of engineers out there working on this problem from all angles, including myself. If you think you are special or different, go solve the problem. One great quote that comes to mind in a loosely connected way is what the boss of the Lego company said when he was promoted to CEO. He said, "We need to understand that 99.9% of the smartest people in the world don't work for us." Meaning you're likely not the smartest person in the world. And that is an healthy thing to recognize. If you're looking for a solution to a problem, you need to recognize that there are other people out there who know things you do not. That is the way humanity functions. Working collaboratively, not individually. It doesn't mean offering up criticism with no solution or effort to solve the problem. There is also a part of this that she comes from two very successful people. So of course, you have money and are provided for. So climate change is the biggest problem you can see. But for the Indian or African who has to watch his daughter drink out of a puddle because there is no other water available, yeah, having electricity to pump some well water is higher up on the priority list than CO2 emissions or climate change. And that's important to recognize. Because if you want to solve this problem, you need to analyze the facts objectively. You can't solve a problem without understanding the variables that are involved. Hence, if you really care about climate change, become an engineer, Greta. Solve this problem for us. We'd all love that. I promise. I personally don't have a problem with them, but some hardcore Led Zepp fans I know seem to think they're a poor substitute. They aren't the worst thing to happen in Flint. I don't hear anybody on the left talking about her. I imagine people on the right hate her for the following reasons. 1. She's a climate change activist. The right largely wants to ignore climate change. I think it's funny that even comments here say that she's far from an expert. Yet I bet those same people still won't listen to the actual experts' point too. She's young. Conservatives like to write off young people, especially young people that tell them what they should do. Point 3. She's a woman. Conservatives seem to hate women on the left much more than they hate men on the left. And they still really hate men on the left. I think it's weird. David Hogg fits a similar description. Aside from number 3. Does anyone even talk about her anymore? This is the first time I've seen her name mentioned all year. Because she's mostly being used as a marketing stunt. Her parents are extremely infamous for that. Greta is, as others mentioned, an outspoken climate change activist who says we should listen to climate scientists and heed their warnings. But to understand why that earns her hate, you have to look at the climate change debate itself. Climate change isn't a problem that can be solved by individual action. Pretty much all viable solutions to it will involve heavily regulating large industries to reduce CO2 emissions and other pollutants. Since conservatives are staunchly opposed to regulations on large businesses, they naturally oppose anyone who warns we need to address climate change. While her message is absolutely true and correct, her delivery style and her public persona does not resonate with the common people. A lot of common people need to drive a car to commute to work and have family responsibilities and can't afford an electric vehicle. It's very easy to yell at older generations for the damage they did to the environment when you have no job and no people depending on you. I thought she was hilarious, talking about how people have stolen her future. She will have a very comfortable life. I think it's her attitude and smugness.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.